they're hearing me now. Now.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the Livable Roadways Committee. So if you can, wherever you are, just take a moment and we'll do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. So we'll do a public comment. Is there anyone we have available, or anyone who has signed in for a public comment, Lisa? I don't see anyone for public comment.
We have not had anybody on the call-in line either.
Okay. All right, so I guess we'll close public comment. We have the approval of minutes for the April 15th meeting. Any questions or comments on the April 15th minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve. David makes a motion to approve. Any seconds? Can I get a second? Justin seconds. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed? Okay, thank you for that. So we have 2 action items for the day. The first one, public participation measures effectiveness report. Wanda West presenting.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Wanda West. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator with the Public Information and Communications team and MPO staff. I'm here to highlight. Hold on one second. Lisa, did you already put the slides up? Lisa? Lisa, are you sharing the slides, or can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Bear with us
Lisa?
for a minute.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Lisa might, looks like Lisa might have been disconnected.
Okay.
Just bear with us for a moment.
Okay.
The attachment that Wanda, the attachment that is connected to the agenda is that similar to your presentation? I know this is 42 pages. So I don't think you have a 42-page presentation, but
no, that's probably the actual report.
Okay. And I guess as we wait for Lisa, is there a way you can maybe give us a summary, or a quick kind of executive summary, and then we can get the slides when Lisa's able to reconnect?
Okay, I'm just here to highlight the points of the public participation plan measures of effectiveness report that covers 2018 and 2019. Let me see if I can just try to pull it up and share the slides.
Hey Wanda, this is Beth Alden. They just made me a panelist, so I could share the slides that you showed to the policy committee yesterday if you like.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Beth.
Okay.
Hang on just a second.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me through my computer now?
We can hear you, Lisa.
Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know why it muted me. Everything is still open on my computer, and I am sharing my screen. Do you not see the public participation measures of effectiveness? Okay, hold on. It's giving me the little code again.
There we go. You got it.
Great.
I don't know why it went away. All right,
Thank you.
go on. Yeah.
Public participation is a way to improve engagement, and that engagement is essential to move from plans to action. The work that we do should reflect the public's values of community planning. In tracking the public's participation, we see that transportation matters to people in our community. We listen, constantly interact, and if we haven't learned anything over the past couple of months, we know that we're all in this together, and that's just what it takes, working together. The Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Report is our performance evaluation as it relates to public participation. It's a way of improving our outreach by reflecting on what we did well, what we need to improve, and it leads to the refinement of the Public Participation Plan, which I will present next. We make sure to include all constituents and are very responsive in our processes. Sorry. Could you go a couple slides forward? Guiding principles, slide 5. We have been creative and flexible in our community engagement and have learned how to adapt to different situations, assuring the community has an opportunity to participate in our meetings. When possible, we coordinate with local, state, and federal agencies to maximize exposure and avoid redundancies. Next slide, please. We use these 4 categories to measure the effectiveness of public participation. Next slide, please. We record everything mentioned here, sent out electronically or making available online. Next slide, please. Here we have numbers to go along with some of the items that were referenced on the previous slide. For a 2-year period in constant contact, we made over 170,000 contacts. 38 plans, studies, and reports were produced over 2 years. In 2018, we printed and distributed 430,000 buck slips and trim notices mailed to property owners. Over 10,000 English Spanish flyers were mailed out for the 2018 TIP public hearing. Next slide, please. Our most recent Vision Zero story was covered by Chuck Henson with Bay News 9, getting an update on initiatives. During the Martin Luther King Jr. Day Parade, while marching with our Vision Zero signs, we received a lot of positive feedback from members of the community. During this period, we had several walks of silence throughout the community. Next slide, please. Several meetings were held with school administration, parents, and safety chairs focusing on education and encouraging the right behaviors for traffic patterns near schools. Engagement opportunities were made available to residents to seek input on the South Coast Greenway Connector Study. Staff worked with community members of the Palm River, Claremelle, Progress Village, and Gibsonton areas. Collaboration took place with community partners, state agencies, along with FDOT and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Our Garden Steps program had the opportunity to make informational gatherings in the community, which included cooking demonstrations with seniors, and they were named the 8th runner-up in the Healthiest Cities and Counties Challenge and received $50,000 from Aetna. The It's Time for Bay Tri-County collaboration process included Pasco and Pinellas County MPOs. Next slide, please. The Independent Oversight Committee had its first meeting August of 2019. Members were appointed by the Hart Board of Directors, Hillsborough County LCC, Tampa City Council, Hillsborough County, Clerk of Circuit Court, the property appraiser, the tax collector, mayors of the city of Tampa, Plant City, and Temple Terrace. MPO staff has provided administrative support for the IOC. Vision Zero Coalition, along with the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Tampa Police Department, assisted in handing out helmets to kids in the Gasparilla Children's Parade. The regional collaboration of the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit brought in national experts and local officials working together on serious injury and fatal traffic crashes. Next slide, please. Here we highlighted attendance and opportunities to participate during this cycle. Next slide, please. This slide highlights participation in the TIP hearings for 2018 and 2019. Next slide, please. I would like to point out at the Kids Day event in 2019, there were over 15,000 diverse people at Raymond James, and we were able to get hundreds of surveys completed in one day. Next slide, please. The survey, excuse me, the survey from the members of the CAC resulted in having monthly committee reports presented in person at MPO board meetings by the CAC chair or a designated member, the annual evaluation of Hillsborough County's Community Transportation Coordinator, assess reliability, service effectiveness, and safety. The input was provided by users of Sunshine Line VN services. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our Facebook, Twitter, and webpage data. During this cycle, there was an increase on our webpage hits on Plan Hillsborough. Next slide, please. Vision Zero continues and support collaborations and citizen-led initiatives. The community continues to show their support by wanting to be involved in Vision Zero events. Members of the public attended public meetings for the South Coast Greenway Trail Alignment Study. The community brought ideas for community discussion. This study connected neighborhoods, parks, schools, and other amenities in that area. More collaborative and transparent conversation is taking place with the Tampa Bay Next projects. Over a 2-month time frame, over 5,000 people answered the It's Time Hillsborough survey. The results helped the MPO establish priorities for the 2045 LRTP. Next slide, please. Here we are highlighting our online interactive map tools. The TIP mapping tool can be used to find funded transportation projects in the TIP. The Health Atlas is intended to provide communities and planners a baseline of chronic disease. The Traffic Counts map tool can be used to find current and historical traffic counts for all major roads. The Bicycle Suitability map portrays on roads and off-road routes suitable for travel by bicyclists. Next slide, please. Yeah, I wanted to point out here in our notable successes, the All-Star Award by Constant Contact is provided to the top 10% of businesses and nonprofits and recognizes them for success in engaging their customers. The qualifications include consistently high open rates and click-through rates. Next slide, please. This information follows up on some of the key recommendations from the last cycle. Use of new technology to inform has been ongoing. We're working on assuring people with disabilities can access website information. We're continuing to use and seek new avenues for the use of social media. Staff evaluated the Instagram platform and at that time felt that it was not the best fit. However, as our photo and video library increase, this may be revisited. Update and expand accessibility to real-time engagement through video streaming. With the impact of COVID-19, staff had to quickly figure out how to hold go-to webinars for committees and board meetings. Next slide, please. And these are the recommendations for 2021. With increased in citizen engagement in environmental justice areas, we're looking to receive feedback and input from diverse viewpoints, not just during plan updates. Utilizing short videos to inform participants will assist in reaching the younger demographic group who utilize YouTube. With the impact of COVID-19, with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 impacting how MPOs can conduct required outreach, staff has had to develop strategies for flexibility of meetings. In the past, the MPO has conducted periodic public involvement process surveys. We will review those comments and see if there are public engagement processes to be improved. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation, and the recommended action is approval of the measures of effectiveness report. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Do we have any questions or comments about her report? All right, and I just want to say congratulations. I know this type of public participation process, and I think most of us have seen a lot of them go through, and to have the success there that you note from national organizations is great. And I know for my own neighborhood, I've had Wade Reynolds present to our neighborhood association, and they really enjoyed it. So I would encourage anyone on the committee that if you have a neighborhood association or a church group or whatever, please reach out to the MPO staff. I was very appreciative that they were able to come out and speak to my neighborhood here in Port Kansas City. So I'll take a motion to approve the measures of effectiveness report. Justin Willits moves. Can I have a second? A second by Matt Lewis. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. And then just before we jump ahead to the next presentation, I want to add just for the record that David Hay and Justin Willits were the motion and the second for the minutes. I did not say the last name, so just to get that, make sure that we have that part accurate and on the record. So our next presentation, the 2020 Public Participation Plan amendments. Also, Wanda, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, the MPO amends the PPP at least once every 2 years in order to capture any strategic or operational changes to our outreach initiatives. Next slide, please. The Public Participation Plan, referred to as PPP, contains the guidelines and expectations for public participation during the transportation planning activities and processes conducted by the Hillsborough County MPO, including the procedures, tools, and strategies for outreach and education on transportation issues. Next slide, please. The following are amendments to our PPP: cosmetic changes, new organizational chart, minor edits, updates, public participation toolbox updates, flexibility for public comment, engagement in emergency situations, confirmation of recommendations from the MOE report, measures of effectiveness report that you all just approved. Could you go back one slide, please, Lisa? Okay. These updates are produced in order to ensure that we proactively reach out to all segments of the community, that our outreach efforts are effective, and that members of the community can simply access any material needed to inform their transportation decisions. Next slide, please. After several annual renewals, the last meeting of the School Transportation Working Group was held December 5th, 2018. The School Board Transportation Committee and a staff level school committee along with FDOT's community traffic safety team, now coordinates on school transportation issues. Next slide, please. The following is our agency's new organizational chart. Just want to note here that Joshua Barber has been designated as the MPO's Title VI coordinator. And next slide, please. Just want to highlight here, this translating tool on our website offers options for over 100 languages. Next slide, please. Okay, the italicized text on the slide was added to several sections of the PPP for the purpose of adding flexibility in our public comment processes for board meetings, committee meetings, and public hearings that are conducted entirely virtually. During the pandemic, citizens have had several options to provide public comment by leaving voicemail messages, emailing, posting on the MPO's Facebook event page, and calling in during the meeting. We have recently included a mail-in option for the 45-day public comment period. Next slide, please. If government facilities are temporarily closed to the public and our in-person meetings are limited or suspended, virtual meetings will replace in-person meetings can be held safely. MPO staff will work to provide equal access to all constituents and will continue to be available via phone and email. Public participation in disaster recovery in the event of a weather-related or other disaster, power or internet outage, which may prevent the MPO from posting meeting notices online or holding public meetings in its usual locations, alternate meeting locations may be announced. To maintain continuity of operations during such emergency conditions, meetings of the MPO board may be scheduled with less than a regular 5-day meeting notice. Next slide, please. We've added the following text to the limited English proficiency section. MPO staff has created a Spanish-speaking working group to translate plan and jargon. The group discusses the language of public information material and assures that translations are understandable. With Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act requiring federally funded agencies to ensure that electronic and information technology is accessible to all, the MPO is proactively converting key documents into a compliant format using current professionally accepted methods. Next slide, please. The following are additions to our public participation toolbox. These engagement strategies are used as appropriate for constituency of each plan and project. Next slide, please. This is the MOE report that you all just approved. I just wanted to include this because it's a requirement that we show that it's been approved, and it's just serving that purpose. Next slide, please. That concludes my report, and the recommended action is approval of the 2020 amendments to the public participation plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Do we have any questions or comments about the public participation plan amendments? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve? Gus Ignis, a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second by David Hay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So our next presentation the performance evaluation of e-scooter sharing in the city of Tampa. You, Zhang, Dr. Zhang, if you're available, you can go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. Zhang and I were texting a lot last night and getting all set up. She's oh, she just left. Hold on.
Yeah,
Let me.
here.
Okay, I have to get her set up. So she just arrived. She's very gracious to join us. She was juggling many meetings today, so she's
All right, I'm sharing my screen and I'm opening the slides. Can everybody see that?
We can see it.
Okay, great, great. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I want to present the performance evaluation of the e-scooter sharing in the city of Tampa. So this is, collaborated with my colleague, Jason Jackman, and also two of my students, Yujie and Seth. So here, first I'm going to overview the program and then talk about the methodology that we used for the program evaluation, and then talk about where we obtained the data, and then how we did the evaluation in terms of different evaluation metrics, and also the we collect information to understand the public opinions, and also some feedbacks and suggestions from the disadvantaged groups. And then we summarize the major findings and provide some recommendations. So the city of Tampa actually launched this e-scooter sharing program from end of May 2019. And we collected data from the launch of the program to the March 9th, 2020. And in city of Tampa, we have 4 operators, Lime, Spinbird, and Jump. So within this time period, we had total trips about 1 million, and the average daily trip is more than 3,000 trips per day, and the average trip mile is 1.14, and the average trip time is about 50 minutes. And then we look into a little bit more detail about the usage of the program. So when we look at the different months, we see that at the beginning, the daily trip counts by the month is a little bit high. So it's more than 4,000. And then starting from October, November, the total daily trip actually reduced. And in February, before we collect the data, it's about 2,600 per day. And when we look at utilization ratio, which means how many times that one e-scooters be borrowed and be used by the users, it's called the utilization ratio. And it's very high when the program just launched. It's 4.12. And later in January and February, it's pretty stable and kept on 1.5. And on the right is the daily trip counts by day of the week. So we can see that Saturday is the day that the usage is the highest. And when we compare the patterns of the weekdays and the weekend, we found that both show the small morning peak, little morning peak, and a more significant evening, afternoon, and evening peak. But on weekend, the magnitude of the peak in the afternoon and evening, in the evening time, is more significant. And in terms of methodology, we look into different metrics: economic impact, environmental impact, health, and safety. We also look into the equity, and also look into the level of services of different service providers. And then we look into the public opinions towards the program and summarize the public feedbacks from some public meetings. So the data source, we did the survey for this program, and actually we disseminated the survey twice. The first round was from October 29th to December 3rd, and we obtained 1,400 responses. And second round was done in February to March, and we obtained more than 500 responses. Meanwhile, we obtained the data, operational data from Populous, which is a third-party data platform. And we also collaborated with Tampa General Hospital to obtain accident data. And we also asked about in the survey, we asked the respondents what are their experiences of being involved in any crashes, any e-scooter involved crashes. And lastly, we obtained the comments and feedbacks from the public, including the call log data, the feedback from the surveys, and also suggestions from meetings with disability groups. So let's look into the evaluation metrics. The first is economic metrics. Let me explain how we calculate it using the first one as an example. So we want to look into if the e-scooter program actually help save the time of the users. And if you can recall, overall during this time period, we had about 1 million trips. And in the survey, we asked the respondents, if they haven't used the e-scooter, then what other modes they're going to use? They probably will choose saying that, they're going to drive their own vehicle, they're going to use taxi, or they maybe walk or riding a bicycle. And then we ask them if they choose the other mode instead of the e-scooter, then do you think they will save time because they use the e-scooter? So we found out, according to the survey results, on average, each trip will save 5.5 minutes because of the availability of the e-scooter program. And then we multiply that almost 1 million trip, and it gives us 5.4 million minutes. And then we use the value of time, which is $17.91 per hour, according to the Texas Transportation Institute research. It gives us a $2.29 million worth of the time. So this is how we calculate time saving. And then we followed, similar kind of the method. We calculate if the e-scooter actually helped to improve the mobility. Because in the question that I just mentioned, some people answer saying that if there was no e-scooter program, then they would not make the trip. So we found out 5.54% of the trips would not have been taken if the program was unavailable. So from this perspective, we believe that the e-scooter sharing actually improved the mobility, and the 54,000 trips were made because of the program. We also, according to the respondents who are saying that if there's no e-scooter, they're going to use the public transit, then we calculate the public transit revenue loss, which is around $21,000. And we also look into, the not so quantitative, but more like a qualitative measurement of the economic impact. So we look into the triple purposes of the e-scooter sharing. And on the left, it shows that 10% used for commuting to the work and 16% for eating out. The highest, 57%, was for the social and entertainment. So basically, the local restaurant and bars actually gain the economic benefits because of the e-scooters. Think about that 5.54 trips would not made because if the e-scooter is not available, that actually reduces the total trips and affects the economic benefits. And on the right, it's just showing the distribution of the percentage of drop-offs in different areas in the downtown. And certainly the central downtown has the highest percentage of the drop-offs. So next, we look into the environmental impact. According to the survey results, 45.5% of the respondents would have driven the private cars or use a ride-hailing or car-sharing if the e-scooter program was unavailable. So from this point of view, actually, we saw that e-scooter sharing helped reduce the vehicle use. And then we calculate according to the number of trips and also the average length of the trips. We found out the e-scooter program helped reduce the vehicle mile traveled about 500,000 miles. And these 500,000 miles were equivalent to a certain number of the traffic emission, which is on the right top, including the carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons, exhaust carbon monoxide, etc., etc. And then we also found out what is the average annual travel mileage of the lighter duty vehicles. And then those 500,000 miles will be equivalent to the 57 vehicles annually usage of the travel mileage. So, which means it's equivalent to 40 vehicles off the road. So these are the environmental impacts. And after that, we look into the equity. So in terms of the equity, there are two definitions. One is a horizontal equity, which is look into the spatial distribution. So if you look on the left, it's e-scooter distribution at the census level. and the right is among different operating zones. So this is a two different resolution. The operating zones is defined by the e-scooter sharing program, and the census level is more like a social demographic ways to look into the downtown area. And then we look into the pickup and the drop-off. Pickup and drop-off actually had the very similar pattern. And then more important is we look into one social demographic features, which is the poverty ratio. So on the left side, it indicates the poverty ratio for each census area. And the dark color means there are higher percentage of people under the poverty threshold. And when we compare with the right two figures, which is the distribution at the census level and the pickup at the census level, we see that downtown areas, middle downtown areas, where the poverty ratio is lower, they actually have more distribution and have more pickup and drop-offs. And however, on the edge, when the poverty ratio is higher, the distribution is much lower. So it looks that the poverty, the areas with higher poverty ratio actually has less accessibility to the e-scooters. And we also look into another vertical equity is understanding about the socio-demographic distribution of the users. And we found out the users are mainly male, high income, and a white population. So on these two figures, the blue color shows the users. So most of the users, 60% of them are male, and also 75% of them are white. And in terms of income level, 21% has a household income 200,000 or above, and most of them, which is more than 50% of them, or 60% of them actually, coming from the household with more than 75,000 annual income. The next matrix is the health and safety. So we obtained the accident counts reported by the Tampa General Hospital, and we try to compare with the usage. So the blue line shows the usage of the e-scooter sharing program, and the orange line shows the accident counts reported by Tampa General Hospital. And yes, so from before launch and after launch, we see a big jump from like a 4 incidents before to 30 and 35. And then it goes a little bit down and later increase more to the 40. And that will, somehow related with the usage of the e-scooter sharing. However, there's a caveat because the Tampa General Hospital, they do not have a specific code indicating it is e-scooter sharing particular accidents. So it is possibly related to the different types of scooters, maybe the personal owned scooters or other maybe even e-bikes or etc. So I think in the future, in our recommendation, we said the City of Tampa may want to monitor the continuous program and come up with this performance metrics. And if the City of Tampa wants to do that, they probably want to discuss with the Tampa General Hospital as well as the policeman department to see if we can set up a specific code for the e-scooters or for a future like micro-mobility program. So we can track the accidents related to the particular program much better. And another thing is we collect the safety data from the survey and ask about the accident types and the severity levels. So the question was, have you ever been involved in any e-scooter related crashes? And we found that 61.7% of the crashes that they mentioned by the respondents are falling from the e-scooters. And this is very common nationwide when the city launched the e-scooters, because some users actually first time they use the e-scooters first time, and they are not very familiar with that and they just fall down. But most of the time the severity level is very low, either no injury or very, very minor injury. And that is same as if we look at pie chart on the right, 26.7 involve no injury at all, and 56% actually are very minor injuries. So 16% is major injury but not incapacitating, and less than like 2% are major injury or maybe there's one fatality. And in terms of health, we also look into, if the e-scooters program not available, then what other active transportation mode that the users would use. So we found out, according to the survey, 44.5% of the users would have walked or riding a bicycle if e-scooters were available. So compared to the walking and riding the bicycles, because e-scooters are driven by the electricity, it's not so considered as active transportation. So from this point of view, the e-scooters could have negative impact on the user's health due to the reduced physical activities. However, we are also doing some other study, as the PhD's research is, we want to find out the connections between using the e-scooters and doing the activity, active transportation. So if there's a positive connection between them, then maybe this claim actually can be offset by the positive connection between the e-scooters and active transportation. And the second is that we also want to look into the safety in terms of the perception of the safety. So the majority of the public do not feel safe when e-scooters are ridden on sidewalk and the street lane. So on sidewalk is mainly concerned by the pedestrians and the bicyclists. And on the street lane is concerned about the drivers because they feel unsafe when the e-scooters are ridden on street lanes. And it's kind of intrinsic caused by the speed differences of the e-scooters with existing users. It's faster than the pedestrian, than walking and riding a bicycle, but it's slower than driving. So it does cause the concerns from the other street users. And now we look into the level service. One measure is the utilization ratio, and certainly higher utilization ratio means the program is used more by the general public and it's more efficient. So from this point of view, the respondents of the survey, they mentioned that the vendors did not provide enough e-scooters in some of the service areas, and also we found out the vendors might need to adjust the e-scooter relocation strategies to reduce the number of e-scooters to improve the utilization ratio. So currently, the operators, they do have some program to help them doing a dynamic rebalancing during the day. So they monitor the usage of the e-scooters and try to predict the demand, and then respond by deploying the e-scooters differently. However, from our understanding, by talking to them, I think their program could be improved so that could help to improve the utilization ratio. And another one is look into the level of service in terms, if the smartphone apps of the operators is user-friendly, or for users, is it easy to find the usable e-scooters, and also ask the users about the price, if it's reasonable or not. And also, in terms of the device, we ask if the e-scooter is easy to use. And then later we will show, we will not only just ask them to evaluate this program as a whole, but we're also dependent on what operators e-scooters that they have used. We ask them to rate that particular operator, which I'm going to show later. So section 2 is we summarize the public opinions on some of the key questions. So the first question is where to ride the e-scooters, and we found out the users and the non-users actually provide slightly different opinions. So from the survey 1 and the survey 2, they follow the same pattern. So the users, they prefer using the bike lane and the sidewalk. But for the non-users, they think the e-scooters should go more to the bike lane instead of being on the sidewalk. And second question is, we want to understand if the users understand the e-scooter rules and the regulations. So we asked several questions. For example, riding e-scooter is allowed on street lane, and the correct answer is this is a true statement. And the second one is that people at all age can ride the shared e-scooters, and the correct answer is false. So we asked the respondents to answer this, to see if the regulations, the statement of the regulations are true or false. And then we calculate the correction response ratio. And we found out from the survey 1 and survey 2, the ratio didn't improve. Actually, only one ratio increased a little bit, but others actually reduced. So it looks like along the program, the understanding of the rules and regulations have not been improved, which means we probably still lack of educational effort to educate our general public about this program. And we also asked about their concerns. And the first concern from both of the survey was e-scooter users do not follow regulations. And the second one is the right way of e-scooters are unclear, which is understanding of the rules and regulations. And the third one is the regulations of shared e-scooter program are immature, and et cetera, et cetera. So the concerns from the users and non-users are slightly different. You know, if you look at the two columns, you will see the percentage are different, but the top concerns are pretty similar from survey 1 and survey 2. We also asked about their opinion of the speed limits, and we do not surprised to see that the users think that 15 miles per hour or even 20 miles per hour is reasonable, but for the non-users, they think the e-scooters should run 10 or even lower. And then we asked them about, do you think the program should be continued? And you know, we also see the difference between user and non-user. Users are very supportive, and non-users are concerned about that. However, in the survey 2, we slightly changed the answers. We said, okay, instead of just to give them yes or no, we also give the option saying the e-scooter sharing needs some adjustment if it continues, or the e-scooter sharing needs a substantial adjustment if it continues. So for the non-users, more of them will choose this kind of middle ground, and they expect the e-scooter sharing be adjusted in some way. And if that's the case, they will become supportive to the program. And we also ask the surveyees about if they prefer the standing e-scooters or the seated e-scooters. And lots of users prefer the standing e-scooters, but the non-users kind of prefer the seated e-scooters. And they also mentioned that they would love to try the e-scooter sharing program if there are seated e-scooters. And as I mentioned, in terms of the level of service, we also ask the users to evaluate the vendor's performance. And we found out the vendor's performance actually do not vary too much from one to the other. But we found that in terms of price, I think the Jump is more favored by the users, and the Bird is the least favored. And others are, pretty much the same. The variation is very small. And we also ask if the surveyees prefer continue the multi-vendor program, or they think it should be single. And enormously, I think the multi-vendors is preferred. So there are also some feedbacks from the public. One is the call log. So the City of Tampa and the operators received some calls from the general public, and many of them actually are complaints. And so we look into the details of the record, and we try to categorize them into different groups. And the complaints actually falls into abandoned scooters and the behavior of the riders, and also complaints about the usage of the e-scooters in the no riding zone, which is the Bayshore Riverwalk and the 7th Street in the Ybor City, and also some other miscellaneous concerns. But there are also some supportive feedback. They just call to express their support to the program. So in total, there were 187 reports, but sorry about that. But we found out that 82 of the reports actually came from the same person. So that's why we did two figures. The figure on the left is we listed all the 187 reports according to the months, according to when the complaints came in. And so that is different months. And then the bar shows the total number of the calls in that month, and the different color shows the different types of either complaints or supportive feedbacks. And we found out that June and July and August are the months with the most calls. And in June, 31 of the calls actually are complaints about abandoned scooters. And the same for in August, 38, the total of the 38 actually were about the complaints on the abandoned scooters. Then on the right, we removed that 82 reports came from the same person, and it drastically reduced the total number of complaints in the different months, especially for June and July. And then we see, there are complaints about abandoned scooters and others. So when we look into the details about the call, when they say the abandoned scooters mostly related to improper parking of the scooters, either parking on the streets, falling down on the sidewalk, or some of the scooters park on the private property. So the summary of the call log shows most of the calls made at the beginning of the program, maybe because the general public was very unfamiliar about the program, so they're kind of nervous or concerned about it. And in terms of abandoned scooter, as I mentioned, they saw the e-scooters being left at the private property, and some calls saying that they do not like how the city looks when the e-scooters all over the streets. And in terms of behaviors, it related to the faster speed riding on the sidewalks, and also some users that some claimed that the speed actually was more than 20 miles per hour, which is higher than the imposed speed. And in terms of Bayshore Riverside riding, some people observe high-speed riding in the no-rider zones. And we talked to the service providers, and service providers mentioned that because there's so many access points to those no-rider zones, maybe some e-scooter users, they didn't pay attention while they get into. But somehow there's a geofencing, and also the e-scooters are programmed. Once they get into the no-rider zone, the speed will be reduced very quickly, and eventually they would not be able to ride it. And to kind of respond to some of the complaints from the public, and now some of the service providers actually provide the buffer out of the no-rider zone, which means once the e-scooters get into these buffer zones, their speed are forced to slow down. So give them a cushion to get into no-rider zone. And as I mentioned, some of the calls just to express their support to the program. They hope that program could continue in the future, and they also hope that there'll be more docking stations. And in the survey, we also obtained some public opinions about, they're mostly concerned about, and there are differences between the non-users and the users. So for the non-users, they are mostly concerned about the parking issues, the violation of traffic rules, and the sidewalk riding. And for the users, they are concerned about parking issues, violation of traffic rules, but they're also very concerned about safety issues, and also they think that the city shall enforce the bike lane riding. And along this evaluation, we took some photos showing some kind of abuse of the program, which include improper e-scooter parking, unsafe riding behaviors. For the existing e-scooter, actually, it does not allow more than one riders on the e-scooter. We also saw some e-scooter vandalism, like the last photo showing. And there were some public meetings with the disability groups, and to summarize the minutes from those meetings, they claim that there are some improper e-scooter parking block the sidewalk, and affected their walking, their mobility on the street. And also they suggest that the e-scooters must be returned to designated areas when not in use. Now, of course, the e-scooters actually are considered as a free-floating, which means it's a stationless, it could be stationless. And by being stationless, actually, it will improve the level of service of the program, which allow the users to easy access the e-scooters. And also these groups, they suggested that e-scooters should be banned riding on the sidewalk, and the city needs more enforcement towards the e-scooter programming. And they also hope that for the families with the disabilities, there could be more shared tandem or the bikes or the seated e-scooters. And on the riverside, they hope that there's some adaptive bikes or e-scooters could be placed for usage. And also they have some suggestion in terms of website and apps. They think that the website and apps should be improved so that it's easier for the disadvantaged groups to access those the apps. To summary, the major findings including that e-scooter sharing did improve the people's mobility in downtown areas, but the equity is still an issue. And people are concerned about the safety and complain a lot, as we can see from the call log, from the survey. And there's some other issues would include the improper riding behavior, improper parking, and also the faster speed of the riding on the sidewalk, and also lack of the law enforcement to these improper behaviors. Another thing is the geofencing needs to be improved. And as I mentioned, some of the service providers actually have already done the work. And the e-scooters is more suitable to be ridden on the bike lanes. And according to the survey and also the data shows that the performance of the vendors are pretty similar. However, the utilization ratio of the e-scooters as a whole has been decreased since the debut of the program. And this is slightly lower than the other programs in the similar cities across the country. So we had some recommendations. One is that the city may consider invest in constructing a connected and protect the bike lane network, so that the e-scooters could be ridden on the bike lanes. And in terms of service providers, they could improve their operations. They could provide more staff to respond to the complaints and collect abundant e-scooters more quickly. And they should monitor the utilization ratio of the e-scooters and adjust the deployment of the e-scooters, and then perform better rebalancing strategies to match the supply and the demand. Another thing is, how the service providers could respond to the needs of the disability groups and disadvantaged populations. And in terms of from the city's point of view, the cities may apply some equity tool to set up some minimum number of e-scooters in disadvantaged areas to improve the vertical equity of the program, and provide some discounted membership plan for the low-income population. And there are already some no riding zones, but there are complaints about the e-scooters on the sidewalk. So maybe in some areas with the higher volume of pedestrian and bicycle lists, the e-scooters could be banned from being ridden on those busy sidewalks. And also, when the e-scooters on the sidewalk versus on the bike lane, the speed limit could be different. Another thing is the no rider zone. So the service providers are making effort to come up with those buffer zones. Now, from the city's point of view, maybe there could be also more like a warning signage at the entrance of no rider zone to notify the e-scooter riders. And the service providers hoped that the cities could give more kind of flexibility in terms of parking corridors. And if there will be more designated parking corridors, then it will improve the accessibility of the general public to the e-scooter program. Another thing is to strengthen the law enforcement. If there's improper behavior, riding behavior, and if it could be enforced, then it would improve the safety of the program. And then lastly, the city should keep monitoring the safety and the usage data of the program, as well as the level of service of the operators, and to track the performance of the program continuously. So this is all what I present today. Any questions, suggestions, comments?
Thank you so much for sharing all those details with us. This is Lisa. Our committee has had questions and been anxious to see this presentation over the year and a half that the program's been in place, and we definitely provided the level of detail that they had been asking for. So thank you so much for bringing all that to us. Any member can unmute themselves if they would like to engage and ask questions.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Zhang? Sorry, go ahead. Dr. Zhang, I had a question. This is Michael Marino. The geofencing, I think, is something that I've seen just from where I travel. I know, for example, there was a spin corral that was at the corner of Tampa Bay Boulevard and Armenia. It was actually on the northwest corner, so technically it was outside of the geofencing zone. And then, as you had on your map, your census blocks, some of those census blocks on the northwest extended over to Himes, between Columbus and MLK, and also Dale Mabry and Swan, I think, was one of the other ones. So my question is, were you able to collect data on how often or like what percentage of rides would break outside of those designated zones? And can that information be used sort of for the next phase of this program to determine where are the places that what neighborhood should be added to the program?
Do you hear me? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so as long as they come back to the Zoom after they use the e-scooters, it would be not kind of detected as violating anything. So now certainly if we look into the disaggregate data, we could look at the path of each e-scooter usage, and then we can find out that. So the short answer is, in our performance, we didn't look into the disaggregate data because the providers think that is related to cause some privacy issue. So that's something we couldn't analyze. Then the city actually is considering larger areas of the program in the future, maybe micro mobility or maybe extension of the e-scooter sharing. But it will not be only restricted to the downtown area that I just showed. So it will be much larger. It will be the citywide program.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions or comments about the program or the presentation? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. And then the rest of our agenda, just old business and new business. I wanted to mention that at the last MPO meeting, they had the discussion about adding programs or adding to the Unified Planning Work Program a pretty long discussion about that. I think we really went through about 2 meetings going over that. And so if you remember, the projects that came out of our committee, or at least the suggestions of projects that came out of our committee, was school freight movement, multimodal school reviews and school safety audits, trail feasibility, park safety zones, electric vehicle facilities, and best practices in electric vehicle charging, and the right size parking calculator. So if you remember, we added our ideas to the existing ideas that were provided already by the MPO. And so at the last MPO meeting, they actually collected votes from each of the members. And so the multimodal safety reviews had 8 votes, and that was the #1 overall. And then the trail feasibility, that had 6 votes, so that actually was tied for 4th, in addition with the freight supply. So those were both pretty highly ranked. So I want to thank everyone for participating in those discussions, and I was pretty pleased that you know, three of the ones that we really supported got moved to the top of the list, and then also the electrical vehicle facility needs, including charging stations, that made it to the list as well, and the school and park speed zones, that also made it to the list as well. So if there's anything that I believe Beth is on, but she might just be in listen-only mode, and obviously Lisa's on. So if there's anything that could be provided from the staff perspective about, you know, what's the next steps, I would open up to Lisa or anyone from the MPO just to kind of give us what's the next phase now that that discussion was had at the MPO.
Okay, well, once we get prioritization from the MPO, then as we move forward in programming our work plans, and if we take those and use that to divvy up our planning dollars to then reach out to consultants or staff as project managers to scope out the different studies and then begin implementing them. So that's how, you know, all of our projects get tackled. So they just, because of the law, everything has to match up and be tied to our program. That's why it's important to find out. And we had an overwhelming amount of requests and a small amount of dollars, so that's why the prioritization was very important and necessary. So we appreciate everybody's feedback, and we appreciate the board recognizing many of the Livable Roadways requests. So I will be very busy helping implement many of those.
And I'll just go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
No, when you get to it, I have a few new business reminders for everybody.
Sure, go ahead, Lisa. That was what I finished up.
Okay. I wanted to point out that I put a little hold the date on the agenda because although our committee recesses in July was identified since it's a little easier a month, and because our Public Works Department for Hillsborough County has requested to take a little bit of a deeper dive and education sharing opportunity workshop thing, July 20th at 1:30 is being targeted as a workshop with Public Works. They're working on many interesting topics like the speed management study implementation, which will get a more refined, deeper dive into at our June meeting. We'll get an updated presentation on that. If you'll recall, in November, when our Vision Zero guest speaker was here, we got a preview of the bigger concepts for that study. Some other exciting topics that we might be hearing about at that is the context classification of various roadways and corridors, the corridor preservation plan update, the technical manual revisions and updates that they tackle periodically, and possibly some of those topics they're looking at when they update the transportation element, but now mobility element of the comprehensive plan. So those are potential topics, but I just wanted to give you a hold the date thing. And even if you're on vacation, since it's highly likely that it will be virtual, you could tune in and listen if you'd like to. There might be some interest in the PowerPoints that were presented today, especially the e-scooter one. It's probably already on the website, but I'll make it super easy for you to find and or email it to you. Fortunately or unfortunately, we met late in May for Livable Roadways, but we're back on schedule for June, so it will seem like it's very quick because I'm already preparing the June agenda for review and mail out. Oh, and last little fun news to share is that my team is designing a Vision Zero Leadership Summit, and that will be held during the Policy Committee's usual meeting time, which is September 22nd, somewhere probably 8:30 to noon. We have some signing panel topics to help create Vision Zero as really clear and implement it throughout the whole community. So taking that and moving it forward. So I would give a shout out and let you mark the calendars for that. That concludes my update.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And if there's nothing else, and I don't see anything else, we are adjourned. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you on June 17th. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.